Have you ever thought, is this just me when struggling to stay organized, start tasks, or manage time? For those of us over 50, these challenges might not be just aging. They could be ADHD hiding in plain sight for decades. I'm Jami Shapiro, host of Grandma Has ADHD, and I'm building a community where your experiences matter. Whether you're diagnosed, questioning, or simply curious, you're not alone. Our Facebook group is filled with vibrant, understanding people over 50 who share their stories, strategies, and yes, even their struggles, with plenty of laughter along the way. Ready to find your people? Join our growing Grandma Has ADHD Facebook community. Please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen and share it with someone who might need to hear they're not alone, because ADHD doesn't have an age limit and neither does understanding yourself better. Together, we're changing the conversation about ADHD after 50. Come be part of the story. Hi, and welcome to the Grandma Has ADHD podcast. Today, we are going to explore one of the biggest challenges for people who have ADHD, and that is executive functioning. And who better to explore that conversation with than Sarah Kesty, who is a podcast host and an executive function expert. So, Sarah Kesty is a coach, author, and speaker. She created Brain Tools School and hosts the Executive Function podcast. She is a 4-time Teacher of the Year. Sarah's coaching and learning program supports high schoolers, college students, and adults in developing skills and mindset for thriving in life. Sarah specializes in translating research into real-life actionable support. She regularly writes and presents for education groups and publications, including Psychology Today, KQED, and Edutopia. Her mission is to empower teachers to support executive function development in secondary students. She's an avid gardener and a local trail guide here in the San Diego area, where she lives surrounded by birds and nature. And she has a book that is coming out for teachers in August of 2025. That's quite impressive, called
Thanks.
Growing Executive Function. So welcome, Sarah. That was a lot, and you have so much to teach us. So we're going to start at the basics because, Sarah, you're one of the guests that actually does not have ADHD. But I would love to know, first off, how you decided to make ADHD your career.
Oh, good question. When I was teaching, I taught mostly middle school for nearly 20 years. And the population that I noticed needed the most support and yet got the most shade thrown at them were my kids with ADHD or my kids that were struggling with executive function. Because
Mhm.
we live in a society that tells you it's like morality and character if you can be on time or be organized. And while I very much disagree with that, that was kind of the reality my kids were functioning in. And so they needed
Mhm.
strategies. And as I kind of figured out and sort of workshopped, okay, here are some really effective ways to do it, you just watch the kids blossom. And I'm like, okay, I've got to find a way to package this and get it out there to people where it's empowering and helpful and doesn't make you feel like crap because you have challenges. And so that's kind of a short version of the long experience that got me here.
Okay, well, I love that you have the passion for helping people. So, as we talked about, my audience is really seniors, age,
Mhm.
although I don't consider people that are 50 seniors. We are older adults in the ADHD space, and we're sort of left out of the conversation frequently. And so, first of all, give us a good idea of what executive functioning is, maybe what it looks like in children, right, as a teacher, but then also what it might look like for adults. So can you back us up and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So executive function is often kind of analogized to like a conductor with all the little parts of a symphony, or an airport traffic controller, like managing lots of different things. And that certainly gives a good demonstration of the complexity and the layers, but it doesn't really tell us what it is. So I like to kind of zoom out from that and say, okay, yes, it's complex, there's a lot going on, but functionally, what does it look like?
Right.
It
Yes. Day
looks
to day.
right? Like it looks like the mental skills and habits we have to take care of ourselves in the moment and in the future. And that's just kind of the broad brush. So if we scooted it down to smaller things, I think of it like a tree with three big branches, and I see the future skills branch like organizing, planning, prioritizing, and then I see the center branch where it's kind of self-management and attention management. So this would be like self-regulating or having strategies to get back on task when you get distracted. And then the third one is learning and memory. So off of that branch would be like, how do you remember to do the things that you scheduled in the other
Mhm.
branch? Or how do you manage learning new things? Which I'd caution adults to not dismiss that and say, well, that's fine. I'm not in school, because we're constantly learning. We're
Yes.
learning people's names. We're learning ways to do things with technology. We're learning. So
Yes.
day to day, executive function is everywhere all the time.
So, okay, that's a good description. So, give me some real life examples. I would love to have a real life example of maybe how it might affect an older adult in their day. Can you kind of maybe, because I like stories, it helps me to understand a concept. Could you give us a story or an
Yeah,
example?
absolutely. And this will be super relatable because
Okay.
as our bodies age, we have a lot of appointments, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
oh, I got to go see this specialist, and oh, I have to make this phone call, and I have to follow up on this prescription. Like, managing being a human becomes like a
Right.
layer of job.
Hmm.
So, if we think about just the executive function that would go into making it to an appointment on time, we've got, okay, what kind of systems do you have in place to remind yourself of the appointment? Intact, sort of high level executive function would be like you have a routine to check your schedule the night before, or maybe like a routine of like looking at the week ahead. If you have pretty scattered executive function, it might be all the way to the other extreme where it's like the doctor is calling you at your appointment time because you're late. And
Hmm.
then there's a space in between for all of it. So we would need the time management and kind of like the schedule skills to make it on time. We'd have to kind of be able to estimate time and know like about how many hours do I need between wake up and leave the house, and
Hmm.
then backwards plan when to wake up the night before. And even as I'm describing this, I'm like, wow, that is a lot of layers, right?
Hmm.
And then we may even have, and I'll stop here because I could go on and on, but we
No.
may even
Please.
have the the habit of thinking in terms of future us, which
Hmm.
means if the night before I'm thinking, okay, I'm not real energetic in the mornings, I want to think of future me, what will she need? And then do those things the night before, like put out the coffee cup, find my keys if I need to, have an outfit with shoes ready to roll so that the morning is easier. And that's just some examples of the executive function that goes into making it to an appointment.
I'm gonna brag for a minute about myself
Yay, do it.
because I actually employ several of the things that you mentioned. I look at my day that's gonna come the day before, but I also roll out my month at a glance and going into the month so that I know what big things are coming up, what do I need to break down, and then I also do my week, and I also call myself future Jamie, and I think, "What is future Jamie going to need tomorrow to be set up for success?" So I do a lot of presentations. And so I will load my car with anything that I'm going to need so that I know that it's already there. And because something will come up in the morning, it's just inevitable. Like that's just, I don't know if it's ADHD or just life, but there's always some sort of something that comes up that I'm now dealing with and falling behind. So I love that. And I also like to share with people who are listening. Another thing that we recommend with Silver Linings in the organizing space is to have a command center so that when you come home, this is where your keys go. This is where those important things, this is maybe you have a phone docking station. I am always losing my phone too. That's a whole other conversation. But okay. So that's part of executive functioning. So caring for your body, making those appointments, looking at your schedule, knowing time, like how, and that's another thing that people with ADHD struggle with is estimating time. Do you know why we struggle with estimating time?
There's a couple. They kind of think of ADHD as like a hardware and software thing in our brains. So there's like different components that might function different as far as the hardware, like there's some differences in thalamus, for example, which is kind of like the gate that would keep your impulses. Sometimes the gate is like wide open. And then there's the software with like dopamine and the neurotransmitters that kind of activate us. So it's I don't know that they've exactly near like dialed
Okay.
in what the brain difference is, but there's consistency across people with ADHD saying like they can't internally feel time, and time's relative based on interest. So if
Mhm.
I'm really into something, my brain's pumping dopamine, I'm feeling that like leaned in feeling.
Yeah,
Time
the
is also
fuel
going to,
right.
yeah, like it's going to feel like it speeds up versus I sometimes describe ADHD as like an allergy to boredom. It's that lean
Mhm.
back, oh my gosh, is this ever going to end? My skin's coming off of me feeling.
Yep.
And that's when time relative to our experience feels like it expands.
I love that allergy to boredom. So I'm one of these people that if I have an extra 10 minutes, rather than getting somewhere on time and having to sit and be bored, that's like torture. I will, oh, what errand can I run in this amount of time?
Uh-huh.
And then, well, I would have been on time. I end up late because I'm really good about leaving my house on time. Anyway,
Jamie, I
okay.
hate
So
being early too. I hate it so much. It
this,
makes me so uncomfortable. I will pack my purse or my bag with something to do, usually like sending little postcards to my people or something, because if I have minutes that I'm wasting, ew,
yeah.
good luck with us. That's strange.
That is. I like the idea of those sending the postcards or doing having something packed so that I could be on time and just sit and do that. Okay, so give me some other examples. And then of course, I definitely want to make sure that we address how you as an executive function coach help people. So I'd like to hear some more real life examples of how this might impact the people who might be listening today.
Absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned torture, which is boredom torture.
Hmm.
You can plan for that. So if there are moments of your life where like you don't have to admit it, listeners, but like sitting through your grandchild's recital when all the other kids are going and you're like, oh my gosh, I am done with this.
Oh, sure.
Or
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like
My
you
kid's
know
not
what
on stage. Yeah, I'm there. So what do we
I mean?
do?
So we can think of ways to engage, and we can think about either handling it where we have ways to engage our brains or engage our bodies, but planning to know, hey, I'm going to be bored. What's my toolbox for boredom? So, for examples, it could be something fun that you hold and kind of like magnets that you can reshape, a ring that you can play with, just something that's quiet and fidgety and maybe special to those particular boredom times. So it's not something like a pen cap and you're like, okay, well, I have access to this all the time, but potentially something fun to do that can anchor you through a little bit during those boring times. Or mentally, you can challenge yourself to count how many times a speaker says a certain word, or try to rhyme in your head, or something that gives your brain a job so that you're not just passively waiting for time to get through, but you have some ways to feel a little bit more engaged so it's not so torturous.
Right. Well, and also that's a lot less rude than me. I get my block blaster game out, which apparently is like the new thing. My daughter plays it too. And then I've got my phone out and I look rude and but I cannot be bored. So yeah, the idea, I mean, I have children and watching someone else's kid perform when my child is not on stage is ugh. Okay. So that's a great example. So are there any other examples before I come in and we talk about how somebody would work with you as an executive functioning coach or what would make them reach out to you? Any other stories that you can share that might be relatable to the audience?
Yeah, I'm like, gosh, there's so many. Money management is something that comes up because ADHD has that beautiful, fun thing to be around of high energy and impulsivity, but also, oh, when that's attached to an ATM card, that's
Mm.
got some spiky moments there. So if you are struggling with impulsivity, if it's with money, if it's with blurting things out, but there's lots of moments where we might kind of act without thinking,
Mhm.
like just that impulsive, oh, I have 10 seconds of boredom, got to have my phone. That's high intensity
Mhm.
feedback.
Mhm.
if you are noticing patterns like that, or the people around you are saying like, hey, how come you interrupt? How come you're on your phone when I need you? That kind of thing. First, take some space to say, okay, this is neurological. It's not me being a bad human. Like, it's
Mhm.
part of a manifestation of ADHD. And then say, all right, so planning for future Jami, like we were saying, or planning for future Sarah, how can I make it more difficult for myself to get into that impulse? How can I put a little bit of space in
Mhm.
between me and the action so I have the opportunity to say, whoa, I don't actually want to do that. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
It absolutely does. Yeah, for sure. No,
So,
I think that's been one of the challenges with over shopping is that now it's at the touch of your fingers that you can go onto Amazon. One of the things that I recommend to my clients is that they put that thing that they want on a list. And if they still want it after 3 days and they've had time to think about it, if they're not buying it impulsively. But the other thing that I've suggested is maybe think of something that you want to save for some project or some trip that you want to do. And when you don't spend that money, put it into that account or put it in towards that thing. And so that's also a way to sort of hack that impulsivity. I was at a senior community. I was doing a talk. I do the presentation, Grandma Has ADHD. There were a couple people in the audience. After they left, one of the women that worked there said, she is constantly making people upset. She's always blurting things out. She doesn't even know she has ADHD. Like the woman that heard it was like, oh, she's like the poster child for it. People don't want to talk to her because she's just always saying inappropriate things and she doesn't have that filter. I know I really struggled with that a lot as a child, that filter. And I'm thankfully I've aged into doing a little better job with that filter. So I want to find out from you when we come back from break, what would make somebody bring in an executive functioning coach? Like, how do they even know that it exists? Because I didn't even know that there was such a thing as an executive functioning coach until you and I connected. So, Sarah, I would love to hear more about that when we come back. And ever wondered why helping a loved one declutter feels like speaking different languages? I did, especially with my mom. It wasn't until I founded Silver Linings Transitions, helping San Diego seniors organize and move for over a decade, that I discovered why. We all experience clutter differently, and for those of us with ADHD, it's a whole other world. If you are listening in the San Diego area and feeling stuck with moving, paperwork, photos, or home organization, our team at Silver Linings Transitions gets it. We understand ADHD's unique challenges, and we won't just help you get organized, we'll create sustainable systems that finally stick. Schedule a consultation with our team today at 760-522-1624. That's 760-522-1624, or find us at silverliningstransitions.com. We are back with Sarah Kesty, an executive function coach. And during our break, I always ask the guests, is there anything that you want to make sure that I've asked you or anything we didn't cover? And she said, I'd really like to go back to that impulsivity conversation and some other things you can do. Is that okay? And I said, absolutely. So, Sarah, please tell us, give us your wisdom.
well, no pressure, right? Just in the context of wisdom, if you're listening and you're like, oh, I've tried that, that didn't work, or you get a really cool strategy and then you're like, oh, it didn't fit, remember that it takes some time to adjust and it's normal. It is so normal to hear a strategy, try it out, and need to workshop it a bunch. So if
Hmm.
you have a fail with anything that you hear on the show or you read in a magazine, please take it as a sign that you're just getting closer to finding your just right recipe. You're not a failure. It's not that strategies won't ever work. It's just that you need some time to like try them on. It's like shoes, you got to wear them in. So,
Hmm.
with that, a couple other ideas to kind of make that space with impulsivity. So, Jami mentioned like the blurting out.
Hmm.
Sometimes we blurt because it's just flying out, and other times we blurt because we're worried we're not going to remember it.
Oh, for sure.
And that's
So, what do
really
we do?
common. And so, one of the strategies I teach, like all age spans, is to put it on your fingers. So that
Oh,
means you kind of hold the idea. And some people will like pinch their finger and like, okay, I'm holding the idea. I wanted to talk about binders. Or, and then
Mhm.
they're just kind of like binders to try to help them keep it. Some people
Mhm.
will fold their fingers to be like, okay, I had this, and this to add. Some people will physically put their hands in their pocket as sort of, okay, I just put my idea in my pocket. It's safe. And oftentimes that helps preserve the idea. But even if it doesn't, it helps give you something to do when you're feeling like you need that impulse to say it without
Mhm.
interrupting. So
Okay.
that one's available. And then if it is like a tech impulse or something, just making it harder for yourself to get into it. So
Mhm.
I have a couple social media apps that like don't always make me feel so good, but I use them for my business. So I
Mhm.
had my husband put them in a folder and then label the folder something funny, like, and he'll change it once in a while so that it catches my attention where I'm like looking at it. Right now, honestly, Jamie, the labels folder is called fart.
I love
It's
it.
my fart folder. And so when I look at it, I go, and then that
Mhm.
gives me just enough time to say, actually, I don't need to press that button. I was just
Mhm.
bored. I'm not going to get into it. And so I also sign out of everything that's tempting. So sign out of
Oh.
Amazon, sign out of Facebook, because if there's that little bit of like, oh, I got to sign in, that gives you the opportunity to make the pause to evaluate, do I really want to do this?
Well, my problem would be that I would not remember the sign in, and I do wanna put a plug in for password managers. I personally use LastPass. By the way, we don't have any paid advertisers. I'm just saying it's a good app and you can use it for free. But, oh, the other one I wanted to share with you is I learned a good one, which is you can turn your phone into grayscale, where you can make it black and white and it is not as appealing to look at it. But when you use the camera, by the way, you're still taking the pictures in color, but you're not as attracted to your phone. So that's another one that I just thought of.
That's a great one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I can
Yeah.
send you how to do that if you want, or you
Heck
can,
yeah.
do
That's
that.
awesome.
But it is good and it has helped me when I need to not be on my phone. I'll tell you what, Blockbuster is not so fun in black and white. I'll tell you that.
Oh my gosh, good point. Because then you're looking for gradients, not colors. That's hard.
Mhm, exactly. Okay, so do you feel like there's anything else we need to cover with impulse control before we get to why someone would hire an executive function and how you work with them?
Yeah. I think just more globally, like there's space to feel both frustrated by some of the experiences of ADHD and empowered that you know why. And in
Mhm,
that kind of juxtaposition sort of space, we can then say, all right, and now I can look into strategies. And that's kind of the cool spot that actually segues right into coaching, because coaching does, like executive function coaching, ADHD coaching, just provides you a space to lay it all out there in a place that's not judgmental, that won't tell you what you should do, because it's just a space to experiment and kind of air out your thoughts. Here's what's tricky, and do basically what you and I are doing, Jamie, like share ideas or find strategies that are brain friendly.
mhm. Okay. So who normally seeks you out? How do they find you, and what does that process look like?
Great question. People seek me out after things like this or hearing from a friend, like, oh my gosh, it's changed everything. I really want this support. So that's generally how people find me, or through my podcast or writing. I guess got a lot out there. And generally they are looking for support because they've tried other things. They're feeling really frustrated. They're oftentimes, I work with very bright people who are frustrated because it's the small things that are weighing them down, like being late
Mhm,
or missing deadlines or struggling with communication, things that are required but not very often taught.
mhm.
And that's usually kind of the common thread when people reach out.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So give us a story of maybe a client that you have helped. Just again, those stories are super relatable, and I want our audience to sort of hear that journey.
Yeah. Ooh, let me think. I had a college student, although this is pretty global example. I might actually do a mashup of a couple students that I can think of. But when our brains are scattered, when our executive function is struggling, like life's overwhelming, right?
Mhm,
Like
mhm,
It's a lot. And so I've had clients I've worked with that have been so overwhelmed that they're almost in shutdown, like not
Uh-huh.
really functioning very well, you
I
know.
understand. Yes, I've had this conversation with my oldest child because I really haven't had that happen frequently, and I had it happen recently. And my child, I think, ADHD exists on a spectrum, and some of us are more impacted by it than others. And my oldest child definitely is more impacted by it than I am. And I had that experience, and I was like, oh my God, like, to just not be able to just move forward or do anything. It was horrible, and I'm not used to that. So I can't even imagine somebody that has to deal with that on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's so true. And you mentioned it existing on a spectrum individually. It exists on a spectrum for people. So
Yeah, it
there was
morphs in
just
our
a
life.
new study, huh?
Yeah, it morphs in our life. I mean, there are times in our life where it is more present and other times where you don't even know that you have it.
And it's this weird Goldilocks paradox of like the right amount of challenge and stress actually
Mhm,
puts your brain in go mode. And so some of
mhm.
the symptoms decrease, which is not what you'd expect because you would think added demands would kind of
The more I
flare up.
have to do, the more I get done.
Give it to a busy person, they will get it done.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Yeah, to a point though, and then it's in overload, and then we kind of go into
Yes,
like limbic activation, and so
yes.
I can
So
think
share
of
your story.
yeah, like students who like even during our coaching calls would be so overwhelmed. They're like, I have to turn off my camera and be quiet for a moment. Like that level of overwhelm that now are like, okay, I'll share my screen. Here's what I did. Here's my plan. What do you think? Here's my time estimates. I mean, with practice, that's the great news about executive function. With practice, the skills get easier, they get
Mhm,
better. And
mhm.
if you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to organically grow this, there are so many opportunities to augment it, to like put it outside of your brain, to timers, to apps, to accountability partners. So there really is no instance I've seen where it's too much of a deficit and you're never going to gain any traction. There's always hope.
That's awesome. I love that. So you were going to give a story of a compilation of your students. I want to make sure we go back to that. And then I definitely want to make sure that we leave our listeners with how do they reach you if they want to work with you, and maybe 3 tips that you can provide that are going to help our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I guess it's just kind of transformation. So I'm thinking of someone who was so overwhelmed by work and school that she would some days not be able to get out of bed. Like it was manifesting as a lot of like stomach aches and headaches and shaking and crying. And it was a lot of overwhelm. And with little bits of exposure and trying out strategies and coming back and saying, hey, this worked great. Oh my gosh. And we learned about her brain. We just sort of built up her toolbox. And now she's about to go to work and go to school in a foreign country for a semester. She's like sometimes texting me, like, oh my gosh, I found this cool strategy. Check this out. And it's very proactive. So it's just such a different space that she's in, really only a matter of months later. And that's kind of the hope that I'm hoping that I'm projecting, hope that I'm hoping, um, because it's so frustrating. And we live in a society that tells us how bad we are if we have delayed or kind of spotty executive function. And it's just not true. You're a
Mhm.
human who might need some strategies, but you're not a bad person for being late or forgetting things or, you know what I mean?
I totally know. I mean, there's so much of this why, and I actually struggle with this personally. Why can't I get it together? Like, why? For instance, I have 30,000 unread emails on my phone, and why is it that my boyfriend, who doesn't have ADHD, doesn't? He's able to manage them every single day. So I even beat myself up. Although I created a company from the ground up, I can't seem to get in control of my email. Right. So I totally understand and can resonate with that voice of not knowing. And I love that those examples, and I love that hopefulness again, because I am mom of a couple kids that have struggled with it, to hear that there is hope. So can you give us some tips of what would be some good takeaways for our listeners who, if you wanted to help them with executive function challenges, what might be 3 things that they could do immediately to get started?
Great question. Okay. So step zero is forgive yourself. Remember that like not all of your thoughts about yourself are true, and some of them are the voice of society, not reality. So, like,
Mhm.
you have space to be wonderful you and be a work in progress, and that's okay. So,
Mhm.
that's step zero. After that, step one would be to find ways to make time concrete. So, writing down a schedule, putting clocks, whatever kind of clock works for you, in the spaces that you spend a lot of time. So, bathroom, maybe even a shower clock. Sometimes that's helpful for
Mm.
people. A
Mhm.
watch for yourself on the go, the
Mhm.
kitchen, just
Mhm.
making sure that time is concrete and outside of your head, because your internal clock might not be super reliable. And that's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Second thing is, remember that your brain is a factory, not a warehouse. And I did not make up that quote, but I use it so much because we're good thinkers and problem solvers and all that, but we are terrible at storing things like a warehouse. And so, as such, anything that matters can be written down. And that doesn't mean like literally writing, maybe it could mean a voice memo or putting it in your notes. Just capture, capture, capture if it matters, because our brains will tell us, oh, you got this. I'll remember. No big deal.
Mm.
And a lot of the times that's not true.
Is that
So,
true, by the way, for people who are neurotypical as well? I know that's a big one that I struggle with. Okay.
100%. I mean, if you think of our working memory, it's like a whiteboard in our brains. It reliably holds 3 to 7 things at any given time, but it's the space that you use to hold things that you retrieve from memory. It's also what is used to like register, hey, I'm hungry, or what's that sound? And so if you think about it like a whiteboard, it's also a whiteboard that somebody's bumping into constantly and erasing.
Mhm.
So unless we have strategies like writing things down or mindfully putting it into more longer term memory, it's
Mhm.
not a reliable space. So just honoring that, like, human memory, little
Mhm.
dodgy. So might as well augment outside of us. So make
Mhm.
time concrete, make things visual in honor that you have kind of dodgy memory as a human person.
Okay.
And then I would say the last thing is, think of yourself like a mammal first. So what that means is, like you said, like, oh, what's wrong with me? How come I can't get it together? I hear that from probably half of the people I work with every week. And
Mhm.
I hear it from inside of this brain too. And
Mhm.
oftentimes some of the base elements for good executive function are based in our mammal needs. So sleep,
Mhm.
hydration. Jamie, I think it's like a 10% hydration, which is not much. It's like going for a walk without a water bottle, can impact and impair your decision making, the speed of your thoughts. Like, it's wild how quickly you can get off balance with that.
Oh,
Um,
wow. I've never heard said that's why I love doing this. I always learn something that I didn't know.
it's, yeah, because we all kind of know sleep, right? But like, oh, hydration, woo,
Mm,
big one. And
I
that's,
didn't know that had that big of an impact. Okay, so
yeah,
you're a mammal. You're a mammal. I
you're
am
a
a mammal.
mammal, which means,
So are you, Sarah.
I know. Which also means like you got to move and you got to connect and you have to
Mhm.
kind of feel emotionally regulated. I mean, we can see on brain scans and like behavioral observations, if somebody's really upset, they're not engaging their prefrontal cortex because their brain's in survival mode, right?
Mhm.
Like if I'm in fight or flight and I'm feeling like I'm being chased by a lion, which is always the example and not true in current day
Mhm.
most of the time, but my brain's not going to say, oh, yeah, you can consider calculus right now. Go ahead. It's going to go, nope. I'm slowing down your digestion. I'm getting you the heck out of here. I'm throwing more blood flow to your hands and feet. And guess where it's not?
Mhm. I've definitely had those amygdala moments. So, Sarah, this has been so informative. How can our listeners find you if they want to work with you? I'm assuming that you work virtually and not just with people in San Diego.
I do work virtually, yes.
Okay. So, what is your website? How can people find you?
SarahKesty.com. So first name, last name.com.
Okay.
Or
And
the executive.
wait, so some people spell Sarah with an A and some people spell it with an H. So it's Sarah, Sarah, Kesty, Kesty.com. Okay.
Thank you. A good
You're
point. I'm
welcome.
thinking we have the visual support on here of my name on the name tag,
Right.
but this is a
And
podcast
because
as
if
well.
you're
So
listening. Mhm.
well done, Jami Shapiro. That was very
Thank
accessible. And then if people just want, easy tips, I write for Psychology Today. You can Google my name in there and that'll pop it up. Or my podcast has lovely people like Jami Shapiro on it, and sometimes just me giving tips. So
Is that the executive function coach or what is the name of your podcast? I'm sorry.
you're very close. The Executive Function Podcast.
The Executive Function Podcast. And I'm looking forward to my episode airing with you. And I am so honored that you came on. I learned so much. Is there anything, again, I can only speak for the ADHD brain or my brain, but sometimes I will get off a podcast and I'll be like, oh, I wish I had said that. Is there anything that you wish you had said? Because I want to make sure that we are whole and complete with this conversation.
Well done. You know what, though? I'm going to challenge your thinking. I don't know that we'll ever be whole and complete because we read and we learn. And so maybe there's just a piece in knowing to be continued. Like
Mhm.
we're doing our best, we're giving cool ideas to the world, helping people of all different types of brains. And just if you are a human with ADHD listening to this, please know, like, put this in your heart that there are people like me and Jami out there that are presenting oftentimes for free and just really trying to get out there and say, hey, wait, that's not a right or wrong way to do things. There's a ton of hope. We can build these skills, and we need all types of brains in this world.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on about the hunter in the farmer's world and how those of us with ADHD we are so good in the heightened alert state. I do also want to just share one more thing as we close out this conversation. And that is if you are listening and you are a senior and you do think you can't learn anymore, that's actually not true. They have proven that we have neuroplasticity, that we are able to continuously learn throughout our lives. What they've proven is it might take us longer to process something, but we can learn and do the same thing that somebody younger can do. Only we have the wisdom and the experience. So I hope that you will share this podcast if you liked it and that you will subscribe and join our growing community on Facebook at Grandma Has ADHD. We are building slowly, but building. And as the world is becoming aware that seniors, or those of us of 50 and over, we should be part of the ADHD conversation too. Sarah, thank you so much for being a guest on our show.
It makes my day to have time with you, Jami.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing anyone said all day. Thank you.
Yay.
Okay. The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.